Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amy, and I'm streaming from a very wet and cold Cape Town today. But it's wonderful to be back with you this afternoon and to be continuing our conversation about purpose-driven scholarships. Today, I'm joined by James Donald from Tomorrow Trust, and it's great to be able to hear more about what their purpose is and their mission. So we are live with you via Zoom at the moment, and we're also on Facebook Live. As soon as we're done here, we're going to upload this to YouTube. So please, will you spread the word about this series, share it with your friends and your networks, anybody that you think may be interested or may find this valuable. And we ask that you also engage with these platforms. So if you have any questions for us or any comments around this conversation, please add your thoughts to those spaces. We will make some time a little bit later to answer any questions that you might have. So as they come up for you through this conversation, please do add to these platforms and engage with them. If you're with us via Zoom, you can use the chat or the Q&A section at the bottom of your toolbar, and you can add any comments or any questions there. So I'm a program officer at Jakes Gerwel Fellowship, which is an organization that has purpose at the very core of what they do. Our mission is to nurture and support expert teachers, educational leaders, and social entrepreneurs to lead system change in education in South Africa. It's something we believe strongly in and that guides all our actions and our choices. Jeremy and three of our program participants spoke about this a little bit more yesterday. And so if you're interested in finding out more, I encourage you to go and review the video on Facebook or have a look on our YouTube channel and find out a bit more about what our purpose is and what our mission is. 2 weeks ago, we started this series by speaking to some of the top institutions in our country around what their application process is like in this current pandemic, and asking them to talk us through that a little bit. On Monday, we spoke to NSFAS, and the rest of the week has been dedicated to speaking to other organizations who have purpose at the core of what they do. And we're hoping that perhaps this will start to spread a little bit of a different message around what to choose after you finish school and going forward. If you can combine what you can do and are good at with what you love to do, along with what the world actually needs, then you really are starting to create a bit of magic. On Monday, Dr. Carolison spoke of such passion when it came to his role. He said, you can't get a better job than this. And one of the reasons for that is because of the purpose that he felt that his role worked towards. On Tuesday, Zimkita from Alan Gray Orbis Foundation spoke about their vision and their mission as they work to try and cultivate entrepreneurship in their program participants. And yesterday, we heard a number of voices speaking about what their personal mission and purpose is as it relates to Jakes Gerwel Fellowship's bigger mission to cultivate expert teachers. All of these conversations can be found via our YouTube channel or on Facebook. So please, if there's anything that you feel like you want to go and review and share, go and do that. Today, we continue this conversation with James from Tomorrow Trust, and tomorrow I'll be speaking to Michelle's scholarship program. All of these organizations have very specific purposes that they're working towards, but we recognize that if we work together and support each other, we will all work towards a greater impact and do a whole lot more. Mark Twain said, the two most important days of your life are the day that you're born and the day that you find out why. It makes sense that if you're clear of your why and you direct your actions and your choices towards that, then you're going to be more energized and more motivated to do excellent things. You're going to achieve more. But not only will you perform at a greater level, you'll have a greater sense of well-being and you'll make a greater impact. Time and again, we've seen people do incredible things who are driven by a core purpose. And so as you listen to these conversations, I encourage you to think about that a little bit. Reflect on what your why is. Why are you here? What is your impact that you're going to leave? But also think about who you can best partner with to try and cultivate and develop and learn and grow so that you can actually go out and achieve that impact. And so today I'm joined by James Donald, the CEO of Tomorrow Trust. Thank you very much for joining us and for being a part of this conversation.
Thanks for having me, Amy. Nice to be here.
Great. So, James, maybe you can start by telling us what challenge Tomorrow Trust was created to address.
So we're about 15 years old. So the trust has around 100 students a year that get full scholarships from us. And then there are about 1,200 learners, grade R to grade 12, that are in our supplemental school programs. And a woman called Kim Feinberg, who was an Ashoka Fellow, is one of the founders. She was invited 15 years ago to spend time at a residential care orphanage, so a facility where people lived with house mothers. It was in Mpumalanga, an old mining town. And it was at a time, I mean, hopefully most of the people listening might be too young to remember the language, but South Africa would speak about, I mean, there was recently this week, there was the anniversary of the death of Nkosi Johnson. And so there was this real fear that the life that he lived, he died when he was young, long before he got to where all your listeners are and could think about what he would do at university. He died of HIV/AIDS. At the time, there was this real fear that there would be a whole generation of young people who'd lose their parents to HIV and AIDS and would be alone. Many orphans have grown up like that. The wave itself didn't happen quite the way we expected it to. But Kim realized at the time, even though while the country was trying to get its head around antiretroviral treatments, how to support people living with HIV, which we've done a phenomenal job on since, and really made HIV a chronic illness that we can live with and worked really hard against the stigma. There were a lot of young people living in orphanages or living with care parents or foster parents. And the idea of those kinds of people going to university wasn't even on the agenda. It wasn't that people thought it's too big a jump. There's no way we can put the money together. It just didn't even occur to people. People were just focused on food and education and support. And Kim felt that her children at the time were 8 or 9 years old. It seemed obvious to her that university should be on the agenda for them right from the beginning. And equally, that should be on the agenda for everybody. So the program started with 5 young people who were at WITS. They were orphans in the strict sense of the word. Some of them were living in the streets, some were sleeping in the library. And through, I guess, a lot of luck, their own hard work, they were at university anyway, without much adult support. And from the beginning, the assumption was for those kinds of people to succeed, they need the same kind of help we would give our own children. So they need a full ride financially. They need living expenses, accommodation, textbooks. With fees must fall, that seems obvious now. But 15 years ago, very, very few scholarships gave comprehensive financial funding. They would give a small amount of money, usually based on academic success. So that means, you get a little bit of money if you got A's, but the chance of you actually being able to get through university just financially, even if you got a scholarship, was really, really limited, or a bursary. The other assumption was that you would need extra adult support. So you would need psychosocial support. So from the beginning, we've had psychologists run the programs, so work directly with our students. And we now have more than 300 alumni, everything from doctors to accountants, engineers, from all different kinds of backgrounds. Some from really difficult backgrounds, like those founding students, some from more fortunate backgrounds, at least financially, but all of them with the same story: less than average adult support, and often not even passing when they apply to our programs. So another big difference about Tomorrow Trust is not this assumption that only a small percentage of people will succeed at university based on their academic performance. We've believed from the beginning that all young people can succeed academically. University is not necessarily for everyone, but it could be for most people. And we found that to be true. Something like over the 15 years, 95% of students who've started with us have gotten their degrees, which is significantly higher than most scholarships and other programs. And that's because we do what parents do, like we don't give up. We understand that life is difficult, there are challenges, and that if you can learn to make that shift in your head that I can't, do stats. I failed stats 3 times at varsity. You make that shift to like, I can't do stats yet. I can't figure out how to get to university yet. I don't know what my passion is. I don't know what my purpose is yet. And everyone talks about growth mindset, but it's that simple shift in your head, and someone can't teach you that shift. That shift only comes from trying things, making mistakes, trying them again, and getting it right. And so the foundation of Tomorrow Trust is creating those opportunities for young people, focusing on orphan and vulnerable, but we support the broad spectrum.
Amazing. Sure. What a wonderful mission to be working towards, and a wonderful legacy to be leaving. Can you maybe share with us some examples of kind of how this is being realized today? You speak about 300 alumni. Maybe there's some more examples that you can talk about.
Yeah, and the thing is, there's this really powerful quote. I'll use the rugby analogies because we won the World Cup last year, But when Siya Kolisi accepted the award of the Laureus Sport for Good awards, in his speech, he made a very specific point of saying, this is the journey that I walked. And then he knows his teammates. So he spoke to each of them and said, these are the challenges they walked, right? Some of them went to wealthy schools. They had grandparents who were Springboks. They had this belief, but also the expectation that they would be national rugby players from when they were 12 years old. That itself is a burden, right? Others had challenges about size, whatever it might be. And he made this really powerful point that your challenges as you grow up through life, the realization that others are worse off than you and that you are privileged is really key to success and to making South Africa more successful, any country. But it doesn't lessen the pain of your own experiences, right? Like, it doesn't mean that what you've been through is any less painful. And a really important part of university that I think people misunderstand, and the statistics kind of pointed out, is that the real purpose of university, and I don't mean from the big government sense that it's a place that works on technology and the future and builds our economy, does research, etc. That's true. But the purpose of going to university for a young person is about who you become, right? It's not about the piece of paper you get at the end of it. And so university gives you more opportunity to kind of identify your identity, meaning, and purpose in life, right? Figure out what you want to do, and build the relationships and opportunities to do that. So I'll give you a few examples. Most of our programs are funded by different corporates, which means we do professional degrees, law, accounting, engineering. But I'll give you an example, and I won't use students' names because I haven't spoken to all of them. But let's talk about Khomotso. So he joined us when he was in grade 10 in the schools program. We worked with the Department of Social Development. They identified some orphanages and school feeding programs in Tembisa, and he started coming to our programs on a Saturday. He was averaging 30% for maths when he started our program. By the time he graduated, he got 100% for his matric paper. And I won't claim our benefit for that. He was obviously prepared to work hard, but he had that space, right? Studied maths at Wits, ended up doing an honors course, doing the kind of applied mathematics that I still don't understand. And then got accepted into RMB's graduate program, which is one of the most competitive ones to get into. And it's definitely not for everybody. It's a very specific kind of program. But he got accepted into it and then is flourishing, is doing exceptionally well in RMB. There's another student I used to guys to start off with called Jacob. He came to the program also in grade 10, a little bit older. Was not a great academic, was struggling, and he ended up going to study human resources at UJ. Didn't really know why he wanted to study it, wasn't quite sure what it was even. It's kind of what he got into. And struggled at university, so barely completed his degree. However, throughout his time there, he became a real rock star in our programs. He'd volunteer on Saturdays, he'd lead programs, he became great at public speaking, he became very involved. And he got to know IQ Business. So it's a consulting company that does some work with us. And through that process, he took a chance and he applied for their graduate program. Now, IQ Business is also very competitive, like McKinsey, like Bain. It's a South African consulting company. On paper, he met the minimum criteria after he'd done his honors, but the chances of him getting accepted were very slim, right? But because he knew IQ Business, he liked the values of what the organization did, and because we'd helped him believe in himself, he applied. The application process is separate to us. There's no benefit to our students for getting in. And he's actually only the second of our graduates ever to get into IQ Business program. But he got in. And he has been a complete rock star at that firm. He's now involved in their panel that does selections. You know, he works on big projects with big banking groups. And then maybe I'll give you one other story about a learner who joined us from Soweto in grade 5. Wasn't sure what she wanted to study, but was very good at maths throughout. Flew through maths, barely passed English and her other subjects. Got to get into UCT to study a maths degree, you know, BSc Maths. She's now in her 3rd year and may potentially be a great candidate for some of your programs because she's realized maths is what she could do. University, she's the first person in her family to go to university. But what she really cares about is teaching. And she's a phenomenally good maths teacher. And she's learned that by tutoring students in UCT's programs. So she's likely to pursue a career in teaching, very different to what she studied. But the last thing I'll say, because I also talk too much, so please stop me, Amy, is that
No, it's wonderful.
if you were to talk, I mean, even your story, I don't know your background, but if you were to talk to anybody who is, I mean, let's say happy in their current careers, right? And they tell you the story backwards of how they got there. First of all, a lot of it is down to chance. Chance opportunities, chance things you tried, you know. This idea that you know what your purpose is right from the beginning is a little bit dangerous because it can be disheartening when you can't find it. So there's a much more powerful idea of being curious about what your purpose could be and being open to opportunities and then pursuing things, right? So this kind of journey that I'm talking about is important for everybody. So Tomorrow Trust itself, we recently changed our vision statement. We used to talk about wanting orphan and vulnerable children to be contributing to society and economically independent. We now say we have a vision of a South Africa that has conscious leaders, so people who've had a holistic education, but that come from every background, not just the middle class or politically connected, including, you know, orphan and vulnerable. Yeah.
Great. James, you speak about kind of creating this opportunity to develop growth mindset. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What are the sorts of opportunities you provide for the people involved in your program?
Yeah, you know, from the beginning, the expectation was always in the student program, in the scholarship program, that it was very much a partnership, right? It's not just funding. So we expect the students to engage with us. So there are at least 8 Saturdays during the year. You have to do programs with us. In Johannesburg, there are Gibbs at the business school. A lot of it's personal development. Some is a bit more technical. We also expect you to do community service, either in our programs or other ones. You have to see or at least interact with our psychologists once a month. And then twice a year, we do these quite intense board reviews where you basically have to talk through your experience throughout the year. So university itself gives you a lot of challenges, right? So, I mean, learning science, we talk about growth mindset. So learning science kind of argues that all of us will grow under the combination of challenge and support. So when things are tough, that's when you grow the most, right? Things need to be so tough that you almost can't do it. That's when you grow the most, when you learn to take a bigger perspective on yourself. And again, I'm sure you guys can think about it. I'm trying to think of a relatively easy example. Say learning to drive a car. When you first try to do it, it feels overwhelming and difficult. Now it's completely automatic. But it's the combination of having to do something difficult, having to pull away on a hill with a handbrake off or whatever, plus somebody who ideally is not screaming and shouting at you, but just saying, look, you can get this right. Now that's a relatively simple technical example. But the same thing happens in getting through, first year stats. The same thing happens in engaging in debating competitions or putting your hand up to be involved in student politics. We really encourage students to seek out those opportunities to challenge themselves, because the biggest danger is you go to a place like WITS or UCT, you get accepted, you work hard to pass. That itself is an amazing challenge. But if that's your only experience at university, you've missed the point and you've wasted it. And the scary thing is that a lot of people are desperate not to fail because they're the first people in their families to go to university. So they don't engage in those additional activities. One of the students that I just mentioned had an opportunity when we were with her to do a leadership program called LEAP in the US. She got a scholarship to go on a 2-week program, which really sort of just gave her a bigger perspective around activities. She came back, started working for a big corporate in South Africa, and then got a scholarship to do an MBA in China. So she's currently in China. And again, that challenge of putting herself in a completely different environment is one she pursued. I mean, she applied and got that scholarship entirely on her own. So I think it's just nudging people to pursue their own passions, like you said, and then to find opportunities to challenge themselves.
Great. And that support that you're talking about is so crucial as well. Can you talk to us a little bit about the ideal applicant that you're looking for to try and help you to develop and build this mission?
Yeah. So when you look at our application process, we only offer, and there's some partial, some full scholarships. So you can apply regardless of what your current financial situation is. We'll look at that and put it together. The most important thing, so when you come, you have to do an application process. When you come for the interview, the basic criteria are things: which university you study at, income at home, those kinds of things, and you can see that on our website. But the main thing we look for is, do you know what you want to study and why? Can you tell a compelling story about why you are where you are today and why that's what you want to be doing? And again, sometimes people apply to us in second year and they failed like a lot of their classes, but they've got such a compassion, such a clear story about why they're studying what they're studying, that we're able to take a chance on them. Right? So I think the main thing is you need to be able to have done that work. You must be prepared to work hard. You must have a real understanding of what you're getting yourself into in our program, because you have to engage with it. And then, we don't have a very specific way of measuring it. We don't score you on these things, but we spent a bit of time looking at our own values as an organization, talking to alumni, talking to students in our program. And the 3 main values that we talk about, things that we think are important, are growth. So this idea that all of us can grow, exactly what I just said. Compassion. So that's this idea that being seen and heard is really important in order for you to grow. And also making sure that you show compassion, that you help other people feel seen and heard, is a really powerful way to contribute to society, right? So growth and compassion. And then the third one is social justice, like an understanding that South Africa in particular is the most unequal country in the world. And it's unequal for lots of very specific societal reasons. And we are all the outcome of that history. So working on trying to improve South Africa is what drives us, and it's what we look for in young people. And you actually see that, often people get interviews from our programs for corporates, say Investec, and then will come back to us after the interview and say, they kept asking me about, wow, your life has been so difficult. Like, you've done so well. Like, tell us about what you've overcome. And our students will say, but that's not what's important. That's not what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about why I want to work for this company, why I feel like I can make a difference in South Africa. So you don't have to have all the answers, but you have to be looking for those things. And if what I'm saying now resonates with you already, when you're 17 or 18, that's really powerful. And we'd love you to see if you're a good fit for working with us and helping us grow it. We want to be able to contribute to South Africa and also make the legacy of Tomorrow Trust sort of expand. Something that I heard when I was at university, that it's lovely to work sort of on something instead of for something. And so being part of Tomorrow Trust is also working on Tomorrow Trust as well as yourself, obviously.
Great. Thank you. James, is there anything that you feel applicants this year in the current context should know about as they apply, if they are interested?
So yeah, I mean, make sure you have a look at our website, tomorrow.org.za. If you go to the page on tertiary, you can see the application process. So yeah, get the applications in early. We have an old-fashioned application process. Download the PDF, fill it out, email it, or post it to us. And then, you know, make sure you get a bit of an understanding of what it means to be part of our program, whether that's reaching out to talk to some of our alumni, whether it's reaching out to chat to us. I think that's really important. And then the tricky thing with most scholarship programs, like any, is that, you know, we're attached to corporate funding. So often what needs to happen is there's an alignment between a specific field of study and one of our donors, say pharmacy, for example. So every year sort of things change as to how big our intake is. But that's good and bad. It means that it's entirely possible that, you know, you'll be one of 50 engineers and we have space for 3. It also might mean that you're studying whatever, fine art in a specific way. And usually there isn't a donor for that, but you know, you happen to apply the one year there is. So I think that's probably the broadest advice I could give you. And then just, you know, listening to our program managers, the advice they would give if they were sitting here is apply broadly, right? I mean, NSFAS makes a big difference now. So make sure, don't miss the deadlines, apply for NSFAS. Make sure you have options and you can decide what you want to take or not take. Make sure you apply early to universities themselves. Make sure you understand all the different options that are out there. And then also for Tomorrow Trust, a lot of our students don't come in first year. We often end up having students come in second or third year. So what I would say is, if you don't think Tomorrow Trust is perfect for you, there may be people in your networks who are perfectly suited, maybe second or third year students who aren't able to get NSFAS. My phone is falling up.
That's fine.
Keep going, I'll fix it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, James. I want us to just, the last question I have for you from me, I've got a couple coming in from other people, but as we're an organization that nurtures expert teachers, I really want to find out from you who your favorite teacher was and why.
Oh. At university or school?
Anywhere.
So the part that kind of sticks out to me is I went to a boarding school. So we had a housemaster, something called, his name was Mr. Canova, and he was very intimidating. He looked a bit like Darth Vader, right? But he was one of those people who I've heard people talk about it now. It shouldn't be tough love, it's tough and love, right? He was one of those people who set very high standards of what he expected you to do, but was also, you know, saw you as a real person. So I remember being in grade 9, and the way our school was set up, there were always these competitions. So it's a bit like Hogwarts, right? You had competitions for sports and whatever. And there was a general knowledge quiz that all the students would do at the end of the year, and the different houses would get points for how they did. So one of the things you could do in grade 9 was apply to kind of be the general knowledge, I guess, quiz person. And so what that would mean is you would take the newspaper every day, and at the end of the day, sit in his office, cut out the pieces of the stories, and, you know, put them on the board for the next day. Now that's such a simple, relatively boring thing, right? There were 2 of us that got to do it. It meant the other students already got to go to sleep, and you had to go and sit for half an hour and cut out newspapers. But it did kind of 2 things. One, it just gave me space to kind of sit with a teacher in a bit of a more human kind of relationship, right? He would do his normal work, see other teachers, see other students you'd get to observe. You could also make recommendations of what you think should go on the board or whatever. So, you know, it's one of the first times that a teacher sort of saw you as an equal, I guess. And just the last quick thing I'll say on that is there's some great research in the US. They looked at lifetime earnings of university graduates, and they tried to work backwards and see how could you predict who was going to make the most money, straight money. And they assumed it would be what you studied and where you studied. And they actually found there was far less of a statistical relationship between those 2 things and whether or not you did work related to your studies while you were a student, and whether or not you could mention some adult, some professional that took a serious interest in you while you were studying. People that told those two stories were far more likely to earn more money when they were older. So look out for those opportunities.
Speaks to what you're doing at Tomorrow Trust as well, doesn't it? All right, great. James, thank you so much. I'm going to allow participants an opportunity now to have their questions answered. And so I have a couple coming through here. One from Kirsty asking if you can possibly tell them more about the Saturday school options and whether they're open to everyone.
Yeah, sure. So our programs are in Joburg and Cape Town. Johannesburg is from grade R to grade 12. Cape Town's, I think, only grade 4 to grade 8. Most of the application processes happen through specific schools. So we work with the Department of Social Development, and they identify schools, and schools nominate, who attends our programs. But we do take applications as well. So just info@tomorrow.org.za. You can send a request, and I'll also share. We also have a WhatsApp line you can ask questions on. And with this COVID response, we've been working very hard on very different kind of services than otherwise. So that might actually give us some opportunities to allow more spaces in our program.
Right. Another one coming in. How do I apply for Tomorrow Trust? When is the application closing?
Yeah, so the applications have just gone live. So if you look at tomorrow.org.za, you'll see and I'm sure you guys will share it, you'll see the tertiary link, and you'll see when the applications, how to submit the applications. And the deadlines, I'll check the date if you want to go to the next question. I'll bring that up.
I think that's all we've got at the moment.
Give you the wrong stuff. It's on the 31st of October is when it closes.
Great. Okay. So 31st of October, the applications are closing. I have just changed slides to show you all Tomorrow Trust links there. So please do take note of this information. The website tomorrow.org.za has all the information regarding the application process there. But you can also connect with them via Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and find out more about who they are, what they do, how they do that, and how you can get involved there. As James has so rightly said, even if it's not you, if you see or feel that there's somebody within your network who can benefit from this information, please do share it with them as well, and spread the word around there. And I do have a couple more questions coming through here, actually, James. Maybe we can answer them. So the one is, do we have to work with Tomorrow Trust after the degree completion?
So no, you don't. We have two sort of open-ended commitments. So the one is to contribute to the trust itself. So we've had more than R1 million contributed to the trust by alumni. The sort of alumni group set a target of something like 10% of your salary, which is pretty significant when you first start working. But that's a commitment we negotiate with you. It is whatever you can afford when you can afford it. We do include in our agreements with you that if a specific donor has work opportunities that they would like you to consider, that you consider it. There's no legal, obligation for them to offer you something or for you to accept it. So yeah.
Great, thank you. And one last question is, a student who's on an extended program is looking to apply and would like to know whether they should be applying as a first year or as a second year.
Yeah, so I think they can mention that in the application, and they can apply as a second year. For us, that doesn't necessarily affect the chances in your application. I would apply as a second year, I think.
Right, perfect. Thank you, James. As I've said, please do share this. You'll find it on YouTube, you'll find it on Facebook. So anybody who you believe may benefit, please do share this information. Thank you so much for joining us, James. It's wonderful to hear more about Tomorrow Trust.
Thank you.
And everybody who's joined us online, thank you so much. It's been great to be with you again today. Let's meet again tomorrow at 4 o'clock to hear more from Michelle's scholarship program. Until then, goodbye.